Hi, my name is Glenn Morgan, and this is We the Governed. Thank you for watching. Now, you thought the Thurston County Courthouse tax proposal was bad before. It has only gotten worse. Stay tuned, and we'll tell you more. Okay, we are back to Thurston County in Washington State, home of Washington State's capital, the city of Olympia. And again, we're going to be discussing the tax increase, a proposed tax increase that's going to be on the ballot theoretically this April. And we've done a few videos on these in the past, but at this point in time, this proposal is really turning into a bit of a fiasco. And it's worth reviewing what we've discussed a little bit just to find out where we're at and what's going to be happening. Specifically, this is going to be a tax increase proposal that's going to be on the April 28th, 2020 ballot. And this is basically, we've known that's coming. We believe that the county is going to actually get their paperwork together. They've had to pass multiple ordinances because the first one they passed was illegal, and it turned out they violated the Open Public Meetings Act. They had incorrect information in there, so they had to redo that ordinance and pass it a second time in December. But it does look like, assuming that they can still get the rest of their paperwork together, that it will be on the ballot in April, which is a special election. Additionally, there's still on this proposal, there's no guarantee that they're actually going to build anything. There's no guarantee that they're going to have a new courthouse. All we're really guaranteeing at this point in time is a tax increase. And with all the combination of poor planning, a terrible track record, questionable math, and it really does look like this is going to be a guaranteed failure. Whether or not the tax passes, we are really looking at kind of a disaster in the making here. But let's talk about the tax specifically. A while ago when I did the first video on this, I've got a lot of criticism because for basically talking about how much of an increase this was. And I pointed out that it was a 38.5% increase in the existing tax rate that Thurston County controls. And people said I was exaggerating, that that's just too much of a tax increase, even though the math at the time did work out. However, it turns out I was wrong. The actual increase is going to be 43.4%. It's going to be substantially higher than even I had estimated originally. Now, for those who wonder how you get to this math, let's look at how much the tax rate that Thurston County currently has and how much they're going to be increasing it by. The current tax rate they're charging is $1.08 per thousand. This is the way that they calculate out their tax increases. So $1.08 per $1,000 worth of value that you might have on your property, and they're going to be increasing that up to $1.55. And so that's a 47-cent tax increase, although oddly enough, Thurston County's proposal, the ordinance that they passed, says it's $1.56, which is pretty odd. This is another math question that we have. We have regularly caught Thurston County screwing up with their math in the past, but that's what we currently have right now. This is the proposal that they have currently planned on the ballot. And it really is just a tax, because the only guarantee that we're going to get with this is that your money is going to be spent, or at least it's going to be spent by you. We don't know exactly what Thurston County is going to do with it. They claim that it's going to be a $250 million cost. Now, this is in their promotional literature and a lot of the way that they've been discussing this tax increase in the public. And what they're really referring to here is the county spent about $500,000 to come up with a kind of a plan about what a new courthouse would cost and what it would look like. And one of their plans said that they could do this for about $250 million. Another part of the plan was $315 million, where they're saying we're going to go with this $250 million. However, both those numbers are completely misleading because they're not relevant to the tax that's being collected. The actual tax that's being collected and proposed, and this is according to the county's own documents that they've put out, is $422 million, which is $172 million more than they claim. And that's a lot of money. Some of that would be spent on the interest payments, assuming they actually did take out a bond and actually built something with this money. And the rest of it could be just part of a slush fund to help Thurston County survive historic poor choices and future poor choices that they plan to make with their budget. Either way, we're going to be paying for this for the next 25 years, which is an interesting story in itself because in Washington state, under the law, you can't pass a voter-approved tax levy like this. Only lasts up to 9 years. But in Thurston County, they had lobbied the legislature, and they were able to convince the legislature a couple years ago to change the law to allow them to get this to last for 25 years. So there's a number of things that have come together, but this is just one big tax increase, which ultimately leads to more debt. More debt not just for you and I, but more debt for everybody who lives there and future generations. People that aren't even born yet are going to be paying this tax, whether they want to or not, if it actually passes. So there's a lot of concern, a lot of problems. This is the largest tax increase that Thurston County has ever proposed on local residents. And it's coming with a lot of problems and a lot of baggage. And when we say new courthouse, what are we really talking about here? Well, according to the county manager, and this is based on a letter that he just recently wrote, January 25th, 2020, to John Pettit, in questions that citizen John Pettit was asking about this tax proposal, does it guarantee that we get a building? And he said, the county manager said, nope, it actually doesn't. It just guarantees you're going to get this tax. So I think that's important for people to remember. There's no commitment that any building be built. All we're voting on is whether or not we have a tax increase. And the other part that kind of adds a certain level of uncertainty to this whole project and the plan is that Thurston County Commissioners aren't even going to take a vote on whether a new courthouse gets built until late 2021. That's according to the recent planning meeting that they had. So the tax, if it passed, would already have been collected by almost a year by that point in time without even a final determination of whether or not a courthouse is going to be built. So there's a substantial series of problems, I think, as it relates to this. Now, Thurston County's been putting out these promotional videos showing the poor quality of the roof, how the roof is decayed, how the facilities are in bad shape. Mostly they got a drone and they went up and they showed the rust on the equipment on the roof and the flaky paint and the moss on the roof and all kinds of other problems that the existing courthouse has at the existing facility. Sometimes they show pictures internally of tiles that are leaking or cracked. And just general promotional video for this tax has been based to a large extent by these kind of images that they put out. However, what these images illustrate is not the need for a new courthouse, but the fact that the existing courthouse and the problems that it has is an example of willful neglect. Willful neglect, for at least the last 15 years, the county has chosen to actually not do preventative maintenance and proper maintenance on the facility. These are decisions that they've specifically made, and it's not just me making that up. There's a number of federal agencies and local guidelines that have been looked at over the years by experts about how much money a government should spend on maintaining public facilities. And Thurston County has spent substantially less than that. Some years they spent almost nothing on preventative maintenance. And so what happens is if you spend nothing on preventative maintenance, then you're going to start having maintenance problems. Specifically, the issue with the roof there is that the county took a vote just a few months ago, even 2-1. It was already in the budget to fix that roof, but they chose to reject that repair. It was a $250,000 repair that had already been proposed to fix all those images that were captured on the drone with the roof, the problems of the roof. And they decided to not do it because they wanted to use those images as part of their promotional material to justify this new tax increase. And part of my concern here is that if you have a car and the car has an oil leak or you need to change the oil or has a flat tire, you don't just go and buy a new Ferrari. Now, it's kind of cool to go get the new Ferrari, and everybody wants a new Ferrari, but you don't just go buy a new Ferrari because there's some maintenance issues with your existing vehicle. Most people out there would take their existing vehicle and they would change the oil and they would fix that tire, and they wouldn't just go out and throw it away and buy a brand new vehicle, fancy new Taj Mahal vehicle. And that's really what we're looking at is the staff in Thurston County have decided that rather than just do the maintenance, which isn't exciting, on the current building, they're just going to go out and get a whole new brand new facility. And this is a substantial problem, and I think it's something that the voters of Thurston County need to be aware of. Now, Thurston County's got a history of poor choices that have also put us in this position. They scheduled this election in April, not in November when a lot more people are going to be able to vote for it, but in April when they know there's going to be a very few, very small voter turnout. This is willful. This is done in a way to reduce the amount of people who actually vote on this, with the theory being that the people who are most motivated to vote are going to be the ones who feel like they profit or they benefit from this, which appears to be mainly the attorneys, the judges, some of the public sector unions, and maybe the company that would be manufacturing or building the new facility, assuming they would build it. This is a problem. This is not about helping the citizens of Thurston County make a good decision. This is about ensuring that the fewest number of residents in Thurston County have an opportunity to make that decision. Also, rather than proposing a standard levy that would be like a capital improvement levy, which would be focused on a bond and that could only be used if a building was built, they went a different route, which was just to pass this tax increase that just gives them the money. It doesn't guarantee the facility. And one of the reasons why they did this is that a regular bonded levy requires a 60% threshold of the voters, whereas just to get a tax increase only requires a 50% threshold. And so I think this is an indication that they know that people don't really support this plan in general, and they're trying to game the system in a way that they can actually get it passed. And ultimately, the Thurston County has also chosen one of the worst locations in the county to put this courthouse. Now, there are some obligations that they have to locate it within the city limits of Olympia, but they've chosen, based on the current plan that they have, that $500,000 plan that they put together, to locate that in downtown Olympia. And there's some reasons why they've chosen to pick that spot. And I know in discussing this with at least one of the judges in Thurston County, they have some concern that the current courthouse isn't close enough to the frequent flyers, the people who use the services all the time. They wanted to put a building a lot closer to the people who are actually using the services all the time, which apparently is a disproportionate number of them are drug addicts and members of these homeless camps that have been popping up all over Olympia. And so rather than address some of the problems that's created the homeless camps or the drug addicts in Olympia, they decided let's build the entire courthouse a lot closer to them and make it inconvenient for everybody else in the county to use. But it's going to be a lot more convenient for these guys living in tents, living under the bridges, and who are throwing their needles everywhere and causing all kinds of problems in Olympia. Let's build a courthouse a lot closer to them. So I think that we've criticized this issue before. We've done another video on it if you want to learn more about it. But this has been a substantial problem, I think, that Thurston County has created for itself. And there's some additional challenges. Right now, everybody in Thurston County just got their notice from the assessor, and they realize on average their property taxes have increased 25%, a little over 25%. Across the county. Over 90% of property owners had an increase in their property taxes. And then if you live in the city of Olympia, which is substantially worse because they've actually increased their taxes substantially higher. This isn't going to inspire people to vote for another tax increase. They just got their statement in the mail just a little while ago. Secondly, in order for the Thurston County to go through with this current plan, it requires the city of Olympia to come up with an extra $25 million to cover their portion of this courthouse scheme. And the problem is the city of Olympia doesn't have that money. It doesn't exist. So the only way city of Olympia can come up with that money is for the city of Olympia to go back to their voters once again and get them to increase again another tax increase. So we have all these obstacles that have been created that make it even less likely that the courthouse proposal or plan that they kind of currently are sitting on right now would ever happen. And there is a poor track record in Thurston County, particularly with the staff there, of achieving anything when it comes to construction projects. There's definitely a staff infection in Thurston County, and it has destroyed any credibility they have when it comes to building things. They built a jail, which we talked about before, that sat empty for 5 years, unused. They bought a 3,400 building, paid $3.5 million for it, spent $18.5 million for it. It was sat empty for almost 20 years before they dumped it at a loss. This is not the kind of track record that inspires people to believe these guys know what they're doing. And when it comes to staff infection, I think that what I'm really referring to is senior staff in Thurston County that are entirely out of control. They're running the county, they're providing misinformation oftentimes to the elected officials. They are gaming the information they provide to the elected officials to convince them to vote a certain way. They're doing all kinds of things to ensure that whatever their goals are as the staff themselves, that's what happens, not what's in the best interest of the voters, and even what's in the best interest of the elected officials sometimes. The other problem that has really created this situation, I believe, is that Thurston County has already acquired quite a bit of debt. This debt was put on the taxpayers mostly by the previous commissioners that were there, and the payments on an annual basis range between $7 and $5 million. They're averaging about $6 million a year. This is debt that's going to be, we've already committed to it. It wasn't something that the voters approved. It was just something that the council members in the past, the commission members, I should say, have approved. And what that does is eliminating that $6 million out of every annual budget means that there's less money to put deputies on the road. There's less money to do maintenance on the buildings. There's less money to put into fixing potholes. And this squeeze on the budget, I think, has created a lot of pressure for staff to, in turn, instead of kind of trying to solve some of those problems, they just want to increase taxes, which is the default position in almost every case with the bureaucracy. Anytime they run into a situation, they sure don't want to fix some of their problems or structural issues that they might have with how they're organized. What they want to do is just raise taxes, because after all, that's the easiest solution for them. Make the taxpayer pay no matter what happens. And the taxpayer has been paying quite a bit, and they're not getting the return on the taxes that they give. And ultimately, this is the story that we face in Thurston County. Thurston County is probably not alone in this. Wherever you might live, if you live somewhere else, you might be seeing similar situations but to this. And unfortunately, it's kind of a common problem with bureaucracy and government, the need to always grow and raise taxes and create grand schemes and projects to spend that money on, whether they're needed or not. But I think that if you look closely, you'd be amazed what you discover. And in Thurston County, this looks like a disaster. And hopefully, with the information that I've provided here, that you'll know more about what's happening. Thank you for watching. If you want to learn more, go to wethegovern.com. We've also done 3 videos on this subject before, which will give you a little bit more background. And if you think about it, leave a comment below about a similar story that might be happening where you live. And remember, the future does belong to those who show up.